Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
This is Arkansas Week.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. As the constant viewer knows, at the end of each year, we like to spend a half hour with our two United States senators. A footnote, program note, Senator Cotton was not available this year, but that makes us all the happier that the Honorable John Boozman was available.
Thank you for having me, Steve, as always. And of course, Tom's got a good excuse in the birth of a little one.
Number two, as I recall.
Number two, and so he's busy with that, and so that's a good thing.
Well, and we should remind the audience that because of your schedule, the Senate schedule, and the program production schedule here at AETN, we're having to tape our broadcast on December the 16th, so that may necessarily date at least a bit of what we're talking about. But as we tape this morning, Friday morning the 16th, still the dominant issue in the news is apparently the growing body of evidence that Russia played or attempted to play a significant role in the U.S. presidential election. What are your thoughts? What should be the response?
Well, I think Senator McConnell, in fact, I know Senator McConnell and Speaker Ryan have come out and said that we definitely need to hold hearings, to see exactly what's involved and kind of go from there. So I think that's the appropriate thing to do. You've got a little bit of discrepancy between the agencies saying, one thing and another. So if it is in fact true that the Russians were trying to do that, then that's certainly something we need to be aware of. It's really difficult, Steve. The technology has outrun our ability to protect ourselves. And at some point, we've got to figure out, what is the act that is almost an act of war? How far do you go before you're really doing things, because there's tremendous abilities. I think we also should assume right now that every time that I'm on the cell phone, every time I'm emailing somebody, that probably people have access to that. And so as a result, that's certainly not a good situation, but I think we need to have the hearings and see where it leads to.
Well, you notice some discrepancy among the intelligence agencies. Mm-hmm. There would appear to be very little at this point. It seems to be shrinking day by day. Have you thought, sir, in terms of an appropriate response right now?
How do you mean as far as?
Well, I mean for the administration, for example, to undertake now, and maybe January 20th. Sure. Or are we getting ahead of ourselves too much here?
Well, I think we are getting ahead of ourselves, except for the fact that I think that there's people, probably people on the transition team, the people that he's putting in place are thinking about this very definitely. And then also the people, there's only one president, and right now that's President Obama. But he's starting to talk pretty tough about it, and so we'll just have to wait and see what transpires. And again, try to have to figure out what is the appropriate response. What do we do to them in return for them doing that to us? That's the kind of situation that you get into.
Well, for the time being, the president who will take office come January 20th is openly skeptical about, and seems to be, the phrase is used, at war with his own, or the intelligence agencies that will be his come January 20th. Surprise you? What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think all of that, once he assumes the mantle of the presidency and, gets himself in a situation, as we go into hearings, as we get further information, then I think that will change.
But even now, he's being offered intelligence briefings and seems to be almost disdainful of them, and that even from your side of the aisle, that has brought cries of alarm. What's your response to it?
Well, I've been to a number of different intelligence briefings, and it's important to go and see what's going on. He almost, I guess the president-elect has a daily, intelligence briefing. And I think, he's not attended some of those. It gets to be pretty repetitive. Many times the briefings I've been to is basically, what's in the newspaper. And so I think that that's kind of what he's reacting to a little bit. He's going to need to do the things that he feels like are necessary, working with his intelligence people to make sure that he's got all the information he needs to keep us safe. And as I said, one of the major things that I heard about being out on the campaign trail, the two things were jobs, 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 the economy, and concern about all the stuff that's going on overseas, because the state of Arkansas can't keep my family safe. I can't keep them safe. The only one that can do that is the national government. And so as a result, that certainly is right at the top of the list as far as priorities for our government.
Some people have difficulties believing that it is Mr. Trump's top priority when he declines these ultra top secret briefings that only two men in the world are entitled to, the incumbent president and the president-elect. Are you disappointed in him? Are you surprised?
No, again, we're just in a situation where I don't know what has gone on exactly in that regard. I do know that every time the guy sneezes, that somebody's examining it, and making light of it and things. So I do believe that at the end of the day, when he's in charge, and that's going to be fairly soon, that he's going to do the things that are going to keep us safe. And I've been impressed. The new Secretary of Defense, lots of nice things said about him. I think a number of the people that he's put in place in the security realm, from the CIA on down, again, are people that are very, very serious about their craft. They're good people, and will be in a position to do their very, very best to make sure that is the number one priority of the government, is to keep their citizens safe.
Let me start on the diplomatic front, Senator. Mr. Tillerson, do you intend, based on what you know, would you vote to confirm?
Well, what I've said is that I'll be meeting with him, and visiting with him, and I don't see a reason right now not to confirm him. Okay, but as far as for sure I'm going to do this or that, I'd really rather wait until I actually talk to him personally, which I'll have the opportunity to do, and then two, the hearings will start and stuff, and see what comes out from that. But this is a guy that's very experienced in the sense of being a worldwide citizen. I think that's important, and has had the opportunity to deal with a number of different world leaders. He's a very successful business person. I think that will help him with the agency, and so right now I don't see anything that disqualifies him. So again, if I had to vote today, I would vote for him. Okay, but I'd like to reserve what I'm going to do for sure until I actually get the testimony, hear the facts.
What is your level of, if any, Senator, what level of concern do you have with Mr. Trump's, some people call it a bromance, I don't want to ever cook it, with Mr. Putin. Certainly, Mr. Tillerson and ExxonMobil have extensive ties with Russia. This is the nation which the national security establishment now is trying to hack in and wreak havoc with American elections. What's your level of concern with this situation?
Let me go back to the other question just
Please.
For a second. The other thing that again makes it such that I have more comfort is Condoleezza Rice, has come out and said that his pick for Secretary of State is somebody that she feels like would be very appropriate, along with former Secretary Gates. So those are good people, to be saying nice things of you. Certainly they're people that are very distinguished, did a good job while they were there, and really not prone to make statements like that. So again, that makes me feel better about that situation. In regard to
they're also receiving retainers from Exxon, are they not? Both the individuals that you.
Well,
Does
lots
that
of people
taint their testimonial?
No, I don't think so. If you look at their entire life and their work experience and all that they've done, there's no evidence that they've been like that at all. So in the world that we live in, if you're a successful person and you invest, if you're on boards and things like that, it's very, very easy to make it such that in the global economy that we have, the nationwide global economy, it's very difficult to be in a situation where you're not, tied somehow. So No, I don't think that's a problem at all. In regard to Putin and the President-elect Trump, these are people that...
And Mr. Tillerson and Exxon.
Right. I don't see any problem right now in the sense that certainly if there were anything that came out, the whole world is looking at this. Probably most investigative reporters in the United States, are unleashed on this. So if there is a problem, I think we'll see it shortly. And probably would have already seen it directly. There's innuendo and things like that, but I don't see anything wrong with the reset with Russia has been a mess. They're strafing our ships, not strafing, but making it such that they go very, very close. Things like that. All of these kind of in-your-face things. Right now, the situation that we have with the Russians is not a good one in that regard. So to say that you want to build a closer relationship and try and tamp down some of the stuff that's going on in the world, I don't think that's bad at all. The actions as far as getting people in place that are pretty tough on the Russians, making sure that we're going to have the correct pressure points and things. Again, the pick that he's made for Secretary of Defense, I don't think anybody feels like he's a guy that's going to back down when it's inappropriate.
Well, in the campaign just ended, you were sharply critical of Secretary Clinton for what you and others said were conflicts of interest between her time at State and the Clinton Foundation. Mm-hmm. Is there a double standard at work here, Senator, with Mr. Trump's own interest in Russia?
Sure.
And Secretary-designate Tillerson's corporate ties to the Soviet or to Russia?
No, I don't see a double standard in the sense the concern there was pay to play, having direct business, and then later on a $250,000 speech, large contribution to the foundation, those kind of ties. But I don't think and again, being not a business person, not a person in the private sector, but being the Secretary of the State. So as Secretary of State, you have a different standard very soon. And even now, we're starting to see the standard is higher as President-elect than it was as somebody, as a private citizen. So no, I don't think those two really are the same at all.
You have been an advocate for expanding trade loosening trade restrictions with Cuba. Arkansas, certainly ag producers. Some manufacturers see a bonanza potentially down there, or certainly substantial sales. The president-elect has said not only that he looks askance at Cuba, but also says he's going to scrap TPP and NAFTA as well. Kind of puts him at odds with traditional Republican economics, does it not? And yours.
Well, trade with Cuba has been an interesting thing through the years, through Republican presidents, President Bush. Well, really all of our presidents have essentially had the same, relationship with Cuba and really not dealing with them, period. President Obama, who I disagree, with a bunch of stuff as far as foreign policy, chose to engage them. And just like we've engaged China, just like we've engaged Vietnam, just like we've engaged, the rest of the world, you name it. The one that we haven't engaged is the Cubans. And so I feel like the way that you change the world is through that engagement. When you're trading goods and services, you're also trading ideas, you're trading values, things like that. The Cubans have such close ties to our country. I mean, there's so many Cubans in the United States that have just thrived, and have become tremendous assets to America. So I think there's a great ability. What we've done now for the past 50 or 60 years simply hasn't worked. So I'm all for changing. Trump has a different attitude in that regard. Hopefully we'll be able to change that. We've worked hard on past presidents. We got a foot in the door right now. It's kind of hard to undo those things, the travel restrictions and things. I think all of that's been good. 80% of the food that they buy is imported. and Arkansas is poised to sell those products. The other thing is you have to be consistent, and we trade with Vietnam, we trade with the Saudis. Human rights there are terrible, the Chinese. So again, we're singling out Cuba, but a lot of it is for political reasons more than anything else.
Well, for whatever reasons Mr. Trump has said, do you expect him to reverse himself on this?
I don't know. It will depend on, there's lots of politics involved. Florida is important, in the presidential race, and so you've got some stuff going on there. But the other thing that we don't know is what's going to happen now that we've seen the death of Fidel. What's the attitude going to be of that government? And we're seeing some little bitty pieces of that, but his brother's getting older. What's the next generation going to do? And so I think we'll have to wait and see how those overtures are, and perhaps both sides will move in the right direction of trying to get together and softening some of the stances that they've had in the past.
Again, well, let's stay on domestic policy for just a second. Sure. The president-elect says he will send to Congress a tax program that will include tax reduction, not only on business, but on individuals as well. You said, but based on what you have seen of it. Well, obviously it's subject to change, but what are your impressions?
And again, right now, it's lots of talk, more than real substance. Tax policy is one of those things that it really gets down to the details. What loopholes are you going to fill? If it's your loophole, then you're pretty adamant about not doing that. If it's somebody else's, let's go forward. So I do think that certainly Republicans are committed to try and lessen taxes as much as we can to try and stimulate the economy. It's interesting, right now we're in a situation when we look at the industrialized world, our manufacturers and things, the people that we're trying to compete with overseas, pay less taxes. We're the highest in the world. So that's not a good situation.
On business taxes?
On business taxes. Mm-hmm.
Among
manufacturers, yeah. We are the highest. So again, we need to fix that. We need to make ourselves more competitive as we go forward, and that's really what that's all about. What we've done so far is not working in the sense where this is the slowest recovery since 1949. And so as a result, we just kind of, are pushing along. And if you have a thriving economy, then that rises all the boats as far as income to states, local, federal. Besides the getting confidence where people are spending money and making money, that's a good thing.
On the other side of the aisle, not to mention the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, they would argue, Senator, that they've not done very badly. As a matter of fact, the Fed just clicked a quarter-point interest rate to keep the economy from overheating, and unemployment's now, about a 9-year low, something like that?
Well, this is again, slowest recovery since 1949. This is the first president that his average GDP growth will be the lowest of any president. So things are heating up right now. A lot of that is due to the election of the president. The stock market's gone wild. Those are good things. And, so the Fed needs to do what it needs to do. Also, the thing that's unusual, Steve, is that we've had, really a sluggish economy with the lowest interest rates ever. And then along with that, some of the lowest energy prices ever. So you can imagine what the economy would be like if we were paying 5-6% interest, which is the traditional average in America, and then you also had gas at $5-6 a gallon. So we're blessed, those things, and I don't know that President Obama can take credit for the lowered energy prices, and a lot of the policies that he wanted to put in place, actually hampered the domestic oil production.
Well, that would appear to be perhaps set to change if Governor Perry, for example, becomes Energy Secretary and you have a new EPA administrator. And you produce a lot of gas anyway in Arkansas does,
sure,
and some oil as well. What's your impression of those two nominees? Are they acceptable?
I think, again,
embrace them.
I will look and wait for the testimony and those things. Based on what I know now, they are, okay? I'll be able to visit with both of them, have good talk, just like we're having a good talk. And then also get to be privy to the nomination process, particularly the EPA, in the sense one of my committees, Environment and Public Works, will have a major part in that. So we definitely need regulation in this country, but we don't need over-regulation. We don't need regulation for regulation's sake. It needs to be based on sound science and, without the emotion and common sense.
Have we been basing it? I'm sorry, sir.
Well, we've
been basing it on unsound science or dubious science?
Well, I don't know what we've been basing it on, in the sense most of what's being done under this president hasn't been done through Congress. There's not enough votes to get these things passed into law. They've been done by executive action, or they've been done by the agency. And most of these laws, whether it's the the Clean Air Act or Waters of the U.S., which would regulate essentially federalize the waters in the U.S., Clean Air Act, those are on hold by the federal courts, because they've felt like, up to the point they've gotten now, that they're unconstitutional. So we've had a problem. Like I say, these things are big things. They affect the economy tremendously. They affect individuals tremendously, in the sense that if your electricity rates go up significantly, your energy cost, what does that do to single moms? What does it do to people on fixed incomes? What does it do to our manufacturers that are trying to compete, with people overseas? So as a result, you have, it's a job killer in that sense. So these are things that need to be dealt with Congress. And as a result, Mr. Obama is in danger of his legacy being, he doesn't have a legacy, because so much of this stuff can be undone very easily because he didn't do the hard work to get it placed into law.
Health care. Most of the action right now would appear to be over on the House side anyway, where Speaker Ryan has gone farther, perhaps in the Senate leadership, Republican leadership anyway, in terms of doing what. It's not quite clear yet what the House has in mind. What is your sense of what's likely to happen in the next few months?
The problem that we've got with health care is affordability. And that was what we were promised, in putting in a new system. It was too expensive. There's nothing in the Affordable Care Act that controls cost. And that's why we've seen these tremendous increases, particularly in this last year, where the average with the government program was about 25%. So what we've got to do is get back to free market principles, not micromanaging all of this to the nth degree coming out of Washington. It just simply doesn't work. It doesn't work in the VA system. It does, we've seen all of the problems there. It doesn't work in Indian health care, and it won't work at the federal level. So what we've got to do is get back to some free market efforts, making it where there's more competition among health insurance companies, things like that. A third of the country, a third of the counties in the country only have one provider. There's no competition. So just some basic things like that, that's the way you reduce cost. And I think that's what Speaker Ryan will be focused on, and the new Secretary-designate, Secretary Price, who's a physician and really spent a lot of time working on these things.
We've got somewhere in excess now of 300,000 Arkansans who have health insurance for the first time. What would you tell them right now? Are they going to lose it?
No.
In the next 4 years?
No, we're going to repeal Obamacare, which again, the majority of Arkansans want to do. The majority of the country wants to do. There's some things in there that will be kept in place. But as far as transitioning to a new scheme, that'll be over a period of time. And I think what you'll see in that regard is block grants to the states. The healthcare needs in Arkansas are very different than the healthcare needs in Massachusetts as far as the delivery system. And so I think you'll see dollars block granted to Governor Hutchinson, in the state legislature. And they've thought outside the box already.
That's my next question to you.
Like I say, they've actually thought out. Those are good things. And it might be that more states adopt that kind of thing, again, versus the marketplace that they've set up, which simply isn't working very well at all.
Got about a minute and a half remaining, I think, Senator. Is Medicare as we know it, Medicaid as we know it, borrowed time?
I don't think so. The only way it'll be on borrowed time is if we don't do anything at all about it, in the sense of strengthening it and making it such that my children and grandchildren will be able to have that available. The same is true of Social Security. Anybody that's retired or about to retire, these programs aren't going to be affected. But when you look at the out years, as you start going outside, the dollars, the increase in growth is so staggering that in 10 years, essentially most of the federal government dollars that come in will be spent for servicing the debt, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, things like that. That just simply doesn't work without massive tax increases to the point that they wouldn't be sustainable either. So this is going to take a president, working hard to sell a program. It's going to take Republicans and Democrats working together. It's going to take House and Senate. Most importantly, it's going to take the people of the United States buying into whatever the changes, that are suggested, that they buy into it, feel like it's a good thing, in an effort to protect it and preserve it. I'm an optometrist and eye doctor. I really understand how important these programs are. I'm also a guy now that's of the age to be on Medicare, so I do understand how important the programs are. The other problem that we got, Steve, is right now it's getting to the point that it's such a mess, fewer and fewer doctors are actually accepting Medicare. So, if you've got this great program, but nobody will take it, the doctors won't take it because it doesn't pay anything, that's a real problem. And so that's starting to become something that we're seeing more and more, not only throughout the state of Arkansas, but throughout the country.
I have to end it there, Senator. We're out of time. Always a pleasure. Thank you for coming in again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching. See you next time.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.